Welcome to module 1 of the content operating system. Now, this is where I'm breaking down everything that I've created in my own content operating system. And the reason is I was getting sick and tired of having multiple different logins and different platforms to use for what seemed to be fairly simple processes. Having things like Cast Magic to log into for your podcasting, and then having a writer that helps you write copy for content, and then having an ad copy AI dashboard that helps you write ads. If you're a marketer who knows what you're doing and you're a business that has its own processes, that has a proven method of achieving an outcome that you're happy with and that you just want to scale up, then the best option, in my opinion, is actually creating your own content operating system. And it may sound complicated at first, and it may seem like, why would I bother when I can have all of these tools? But what I can see happening over the next year or so and beyond is that creating our own tools with our own workflows and our own processes is going to continue to become easier and easier. Right now, it is already super easy to do. Just a few weeks ago, probably 2 months ago, I had no idea how to use some of these tools, and I picked it up fairly easy with different YouTube videos like this one, or forums, or I've actually hired different consultants at different times to find out how I can achieve my specific things for this system. And I just run a fairly small business in comparison to some of the businesses that could get the most from this. If you're a 7 or 8 figure business, you should absolutely be focusing on these processes and these custom workflows for your particular business. Now, what I'm describing here today is a content operating system. So this one is specifically for things like podcasts, newsletters, blog posts, YouTube videos, any of your long form type of content. It's a system to help you maximize distributing that type of content in as many different ways and high value ways as possible. So let's dive in and have a quick little recap of what my content operating system looks like. So on here, I mapped it all out, a bit of a mind map and things like that, where, okay, what are the things that we actually do in our business? And for me, like I said, we have a podcast, we have a weekly newsletter. In fact, we use email marketing in our pet care brand quite a lot. We send anywhere between 3 to 5 emails per week for that particular brand. So I wouldn't really call it a newsletter. But my own personal brand, I have a newsletter where I talk about all of this type of stuff. If you want to sign up, there's a link below somewhere. And it was like, okay, after I broke it down into a bit of a mind map of all the things we need to achieve, I was like, okay, what is my actual workflow when I complete each of these particular pieces of content? How can I maximize that workflow the most? So we're doing things like turning it into multiple subject lines to choose from. We're then looking at, okay, how can we turn it into social media posts? How can we turn it into not just social media posts that are promoting it, but educational posts as well? How can we then promote it with an email that is customized for each release, and all of those types of things? And what I quickly realized is, as I was building these the first time round, is each of these workflows would have a lot of the same pieces of information that I needed to pull from. So one of the core methods that I have is when you're using things like OpenAI or ChatGPT or any other type of AI model, there's a really important framework to follow, which is prime, prompt, and proof. So what do I mean by that? Priming involves setting the stage, giving the AI some information about you and your business or what you're actually creating so that it can have some context to understand before it actually starts to create anything. So that is the first step every single time when we're creating a prompt. And I had to figure out an easier way rather than putting, things like our brand voice, things like our writing style, things like what type of grade level we write out, the language grade level, so that the AI could use that in the outputs it produces. So that was the whole idea of, okay, if we're going to build a content repurposing system, we need to have a way to show that easily. Then once we have that, we then put it through the prompt. So prompting is a whole another school in itself, and I'm going to go deep into prompting over the next few lessons. So make sure you subscribe and tune in for those as well. And then finally, we don't want to rely entirely on AI just yet. it still hallucinates, it still provides crazy answers that have no relevance, and it says words that people would never use in copywriting that you would not want to use yourself. So you still have to proof it as well and edit things and remove things and so forth. So that's kind of the framework that I follow when we're setting up everything. So knowing all of that, then let's dive into the system itself inside Airtable now. And I used Airtable because it's so much easier to piece together everything that you need in order to have it into the one place. I used to look at Airtable as an unneeded expense. Like, why not just use Google Sheets instead? And it was because I didn't really understand the value that this particular software can actually provide. And the good news is I'm still on the free plan. Like, there's no reason for me to upgrade just yet, even with what I consider to be a fairly sophisticated system built out. But from Airtable standards, it's actually pretty simple, pretty basic, and they're willing to give this part away for free still, which is pretty cool. Maybe there'll come a time where we need different automations and stuff by Airtable itself where we need to upgrade, but right now it's pretty solid. And this first tab here is what I call brand assets. So the other idea was, so we have this pet care education platform. We built it to 7 figures pretty quickly. Found out it was kind of hard to manage at that level, scaled it back to 500K per year or thereabouts. I work on it 1 day a week. I've got 2 team members and a business partner. Super easy to manage. I was like, okay, if we can streamline this even more, then probably a good business decision would be launching similar brands like what we currently have, but in different niches as well. And if I only have to spend 2 days a week on 3 or 4 or 5 brands, then that's a good place to be. You know, they're all generating $500,000 a year. Not a bad little business that we then have that then makes this business worth it. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, I need to have a place where I can track my different brands and feed each different individual brand voice, excluded words and so forth into each prompt without having to build a custom workflow every single time. So that's what I did. And what I've now realized is that I've kind of built the bare bones of a software product that would be easy to just build a UI on top of this and make it pretty, and people would probably pay $40 a month for it. But that then kind of defeats the theory that I have, which is having so many SaaS platforms is just going to get so annoying for so many people, and it's just going to defeat the entire purpose. So back to the dashboard here. So we've got our business name, email as a way to identify it, although we probably don't need that. We can just identify it from the business name. I did put it there in case we take on different clients at times. And then we have a brand voice. So each brand voice is different. Then we have excluded words, which unfortunately AI doesn't always follow, but we at least try. And we have like a writing grade level. I find that adding a writing grade level into every prompt just changes it entirely. If you do this, if you find the writing grade level that's right for you, and it's probably going to be around 5th, 6th or 7th level, grade level, then that's going to just improve your outputs, just that alone, by a lot. So that's kind of what we've got here so far. And it's easy now. If there are any other things that I think would be relevant for the brand, we can easily add that and then put it into our prompts from this particular dashboard. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is we then have our different funnels or different workflows, like I was showing back on this map here, which is our newsletters, our YouTube videos, our podcasts, our blog posts, and our virtual summits. So each of these individual ones I'm going to go into later in a individual video for each of them, because they then attach to make.com, and there's 3 or 4 different automations that does all of the content. So each of these tabs will get quite in depth as well. But basically the way I think about it is like, okay, when we're creating a newsletter, what do we need to know before each prompt? And then we need to interlink it, which I'm going to get to in a second. And then we have a button to then start creating the assets or pushing it through the AI so that we can create the assets that we need for each of these. So we have each of those workflows. But then I wanted to take it to the next level. It's like, okay, once we create all of the extra assets from our long form, like social media posts, for example, how can we then feed that into an easier table for us to view and sort through and determine whether we're going to publish it, edit it, or just say no completely? And that's when I build out this all social posts section. Now, if we're just doing this from the main view, which is kind of default when you set up a new table, then it can become pretty hard to understand. So that's where, our brand assets come into play here, where as long as we're giving each of these social posts a category or describing the brand asset that it's a part of, we can then create a different view over here on the left that for each of our individual brands. So if I just want to look at our Pet Summits brand, for example, then I have got a different view set up that filters that brand by the Pet Summits asset value, and only the posts that have been created for that brand will show up in this particular section. Likewise for my own brand, if I have any posts in here for myself, which I don't yet, then it's filtered by my brand as well, and then I can easily see them. So that just makes it so much easier to view compared to if we were to send this into a Google Sheets, for example. Google Sheets is great. We used it a lot, and I do enjoy it, and I like that it's free or it's included with your Google Workspace, but it can't do these advanced automations, which is what you kind of need as your business scales. And the amount of mistakes that my team made when we had 9 employees because we worked out of Google Sheets was astounding. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. And what I now realize is that if we used Airtable with some extra formulas and some better sorting and aggregating of all of our data into the one place, the one single source of truth, then we wouldn't have had so many problems. We have the same now for emails as well. So we push all of the emails that the AI creates into here so that we can sort through it. We can view it by each individual brand. Once it's approved, then someone in the team can come in and upload it into our CRM, whatever we're using. I've got another one set up here for Reels as well. So I've got a few different prompts to create hooks for Reels if I wanted to do some TikToks or Reels or whatever, and they are in there too. Now, we also, this is where we store all of our custom templates and prompts for our social media posts and our email prompts. And this is where this tool starts to get really advanced. And if I'm being honest, I didn't know that this was possible with Airtable just a few weeks ago. I hired someone on Upwork. He's an absolute legend. He's helped me understand all of the different capabilities of Airtable in a much more practical way. Because as I was learning a lot of these things and you read the documentation of Airtable, you don't really know what's possible. They kind of explain it in developer terms or in a way that is not very practical. So you kind of know what it can do, but you don't know how you can actually use it in your particular scenario. So let me break down how we use the email prompts, for example, and what each column is saying or what it is doing so that you can understand it more in a practical way. So first we want to make sure that we're giving each of our prompts an identifier, an ID, something to actually understand what it is. And then this particular next column here is the prompt itself. So this particular prompt is what I feed into the make.com automations that then go into OpenAI, and in conjunction with existing prompts inside the OpenAI API, which I'm going to explain in a future video, it pulls each of these particular sections and outputs the response or the output of the AI based on what we're writing here. So if there's ever a time where we're not getting the outcome that we want from each of our prompts, then we can just add them into this section rather than having to go inside make.com, find the automation. If it's not myself training somebody on how to find it, it's just going to be a complete nightmare. So I was like, okay, how can we make sure this scales as the team scales as well? And how can we make sure we give them some of the control over what comes out? So they will come in, they will create their prompt into this section, and then this is where Airtable does some really cool things. So here we've got a table or a column called package template prompt text. And what this basically does is it's a formula that will append the email template prompt that I just created with some identifying characters that we need for our AI automations to work. And this may not make a lot of sense at this time, but for us to run this through a make.com automation that takes as many prompts as we want, or as many templates as we want, I should say, it could do up to, we've got some different workflows where it's producing 70 different prompts based on our templates, just one after the other. Now, it would be impossible to do that all in the one single AI prompt. And if you were to do it manually in ChatGPT, for example, you would have to sit there for an hour and just feed each individual one into the actual AI itself, copy, paste, blah, blah, blah. That would just be so inefficient. So the way that we've got it set up is it will find each of these prompts based on these two hashtags here. It will then run through this prompt, and then it will end the prompt based on the new line symbol here. So we created this formula, and by we, I mean I had some help with this. Again, I'm not a developer. I just have these, ideas in my mind, and I try and figure out how to create them. And that then feeds that into the make.com, and we'll get to that in a future video. Here, once the output comes back, then we give it an email type, and then all of these are just our linked records that are connected to these other tables here. All right, so now that I've explained the emails, the social posts are pretty much the same, but there's just more things going on here, which is why I didn't go to that first. So we've got our template or our social prompt name, our template prompt text, which is different types of templates that we've found, created, so forth. We've got our package template, which then provides the extra details we need in order for it to work in our automation, and then where the records are linked to. So what this actually does, if we go into one of these, is let's have a look at the YouTube one, for example. So there's some things that I'm going to explain in a future video where we create the YouTube assets, things like titles and descriptions. We create our promotional materials, our emails, and so forth. But here's where it gets pretty interesting. So all of these social post templates that I've created over here is now linked in a record up here. So link to social post, link to another record. It's been linked, meaning this can now be found inside here, and we can begin to pull those records into this particular table as well. Why that is important is because when we're running the automations for this particular table, we can now reference these particular prompts inside of our OpenAI module inside Make. So if I wanted to, these are all of our prompts here. If I wanted to just have this results in 3 steps prompt, for example, it'll add that in there. It'll add then our little coded prompt here in this section. And then when I create social post, when I click this button to say create social posts, it'll send this information plus the other information in this particular record to make.com, which then feeds it into OpenAI through the API, creates an output. And then once that output comes out, it ticks this box here and then goes into our social posts view, or our all social posts view, and puts it in here for me to review. So let's actually run that so I can share with you exactly what I mean. So all this does is create a webhook, pushes the data into Make. And then as you can see now on the screen here, we just got this little checkbox. It's been ticked, which means there should now be a social post in here, and here it is. So what that has done is it's picked up the information from the video. It's completed the template that we've fed into OpenAI API, into ChatGPT essentially. And then it has sent the output back into Airtable now for me to approve. And it's told me where it's come from. So it's come from the SaaS is dead for Mitch. I could even change that to say that it's from YouTube as well, which would help us identify it. But we don't have too many brands or too many employees right now. It's fine. And then it says how to improve your writing style. Keep it direct. No need for fancy words or long sentences. Get straight to the point. Be relatable. Anyway, this is basically all the stuff that I just said at the start of this video. I talk about it all the time. So it's then told me that it's come from the Mitch brand, which has created that post ID over here on the left. It's told me what content name it came from. It's the record ID is how we identify where to feed it back into inside Airtable. Now I would come in here and I would say, okay, this is good for X. It's good for an Instagram reel if we put it over the top of some footage, for example, and maybe we want to do the same for a TikTok post. Once I'm happy with that, then I would click yes. And what I have not built yet, but is going to happen in a later stage, and by the time we get to that particular part, I'll have it built. Once I click yes, the idea is I want it to send into Metricool, a social media scheduler, and has it ready to go. We just add our creative, our images or our videos on top, and it gets scheduled into our auto posting schedule. So that's the power of these types of workflows. And the only way we can make this work so seamlessly is by interlinking different records, by making sure that we're looking at all of the different workflows that we need for each of our individual processes based on what we do. This is why this is so cool, is because it's based exactly on what we do, what we're trying to achieve. So this is just a brief overview of how Airtable works, how some of the advanced features work in actual practicality, in building workflows that are pretty cool in my opinion. And these type of workflows are just going to save us so much time in the long run. But it's not just the content repurposing system. I started here because this is what I know best. And I know that we can get a lot of productivity out of here. But we're going to build this for all of our different processes in our business, from product production to operations to onboarding and team management and so much more. So I'd love to hear from you down below. What is your biggest questions from this? I imagine there's going to be a ton of questions, some clarifications I need to make, and I'm going to make those clarifications in future videos. So comment down below, let me know. And in the next video, we're going to start diving into more of each individual tab and how each individual tab works, how it connects with Make, the different prompts that I'm using with OpenAI. So stick around and I'll see you in the next module.